Blood dripped from Jamal Washington's oxygen tube as flight attendant Stephanie Keller yanked it from his nose. "Not permitted equipment," she sneered. As the 16-year-old's breathing faltered mid-flight, Dr. Andre Washington lunged toward his son, medical license in hand. Too late, Jamal's eyes rolled back. Before we dive deeper into this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more true stories about justice prevailing against discrimination. How would you react if you witnessed a flight attendant endangering a passenger's life? Let's find out what happened next in this unbelievable true story. The morning had started with such promise. Dr. Andre Washington, one of Atlanta's most respected neurosurgeons, carefully packed the last of his son's medical supplies into their carry-on luggage. He double-checked the portable oxygen concentrator, ensuring it was fully charged for their 4-hour flight to Boston. "Jamal, you got all your documentation?" Andre called out, his voice echoing through their spacious suburban home. 16-year-old Jamal Washington appeared in the doorway, a folder clutched in his slender hands. Despite the nasal cannula delivering supplemental oxygen through clear tubing, Jamal's bright eyes and quick smile revealed his excitement. "Got everything, Dad. All the doctor's notes, the FAA approval forms, and even that letter from Dr. Harrison explaining why I need it after the surgery." Andre nodded approvingly. Just 3 months ago, Jamal had undergone a complex procedure to treat a rare respiratory condition. The surgery had been successful, but his recovery required supplemental oxygen, especially during air travel when cabin pressure could exacerbate his breathing difficulties. "Perfect. This is going to be an amazing trip," Andre said, zipping the final bag. "The MIT Summer Science Program only accepts 50 students nationwide. You earned this." Jamal adjusted his cannula self-consciously. "I just hope I don't stand out too much." "You'll stand out because you're brilliant," Andre replied, placing a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "Not because of this temporary equipment." Lisa Washington, Andre's wife and a prominent civil rights attorney, entered the room with a travel mug of coffee. Her elegant pantsuit and briefcase indicated she was heading straight to court after seeing them off. "I wish I could come with you too," she said, hugging Jamal carefully to avoid disturbing his oxygen line. "This discrimination case has the worst timing." "We'll be fine," Andre assured her. "It's just 4 days until you join us. Besides, Jamal and I could use some father-son time before he's surrounded by all those science geniuses." Lisa smiled but her eyes held concern. "You have all the medical documentation?" "Triple-checked," Andre confirmed. "And you'll call me the second you land?" "First thing," Jamal promised. Their driver arrived precisely at 7:30, loading their luggage into the black SUV for the trip to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. The morning traffic moved surprisingly well, giving them ample time for check-in and security. What they hadn't anticipated was the first sign of trouble at the TSA checkpoint. "Sir, what's this device?" The TSA officer, whose name tag identified him as Bryce Thompson, held up Jamal's oxygen concentrator with suspicious scrutiny. "It's a portable oxygen concentrator. My son has a medical condition requiring supplemental oxygen," Andre explained calmly, reaching for the documentation in his carry-on. Thompson frowned, examining the device as if it might contain explosives. "We'll need to see medical documentation and proper approval for this." "Of course," Andre said, maintaining his composure as he handed over the comprehensive file of paperwork. "Everything's in order. We've flown with this equipment before." Thompson flipped through the papers with exaggerated slowness, his expression growing increasingly skeptical. "And you're saying you're his doctor?" "No, I'm his father," Andre clarified. "I am a doctor, a neurosurgeon at Emory University Hospital, but my son's pulmonologist provided all the necessary documentation there." Thompson continued to hold the line, examining each page with unnecessary thoroughness while the queue behind them grew. Jamal shifted uncomfortably, acutely aware of the stares from other passengers. "I'll need to get a supervisor to verify this," Thompson finally said. 5 minutes later, a TSA supervisor arrived, quickly reviewed the documentation, and waved them through with an apologetic smile. "Everything looks in order, Dr. Washington. Sorry for the inconvenience." As they gathered their belongings, Andre noticed Jamal's tight expression. "You okay, son?" "Yeah," Jamal said quietly. "Just the usual." Andre nodded, understanding his son's frustration. Even at 16, Jamal had already experienced a lifetime of subtle and not-so-subtle discrimination. Being both black and now dealing with a medical condition made him doubly vulnerable to unwarranted scrutiny. They reached their gate with 40 minutes to spare. Several passengers in the waiting area glanced at Jamal's oxygen equipment with curious or uncomfortable expressions. Andre had learned to ignore such looks, but he knew each one landed like a tiny dart on his son's self-esteem. "Dr. Washington." The gate agent, a young man named Timothy Reed, approached them with a tablet in hand. "I noticed you're traveling with medical equipment. I just wanted to confirm we have you properly seated with access to power for the device if needed." Andre smiled with relief at the professional treatment. "Yes, thank you. We have all the documentation if you need to verify anything." "No need, sir. It's all in our system," Reed assured them. "We've seated you in 3A and 3B in first class where you'll have extra space and priority assistance if needed. We'll begin boarding in about 15 minutes. As Reed walked away, Jamal exhaled audibly. That was actually normal. "That's how it should always be," Andre replied. When boarding began, they joined the first group called. Just as they approached the jet bridge entrance, a flight attendant with a tight blonde bun and pressed lips stopped them. Her name tag read, Stephanie Keller, Senior Flight Attendant. "What's this equipment?" she asked sharply, pointing at Jamal's concentrator. Andre explained once again, offering the FAA approval documents. Keller barely glanced at the paperwork. "Fine. I'll need to verify this with the captain once we're aboard. Some people think they deserve special treatment," she added under her breath, just loud enough for them to hear. As they settled into their spacious first-class seats, Jamal turned to his father. "Dad, I'm nervous about the program. What if everyone's smarter than me?" Andre adjusted his son's cannula with practiced care. "Let me tell you something. When I started my residency, I was the only black doctor in my cohort. People assumed I was there because of affirmative action, not because I graduated top of my class. But you know what I did?" "What?" Jamal asked, genuinely curious. "I let my work speak for itself. Excellence can't be denied forever," Andre said. "And you, my son, are excellent." The plane began to taxi, and Jamal leaned back in his seat, allowing himself a moment of excitement about the prestigious program ahead. The prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology had selected him from thousands of applicants for their summer science immersion program. Despite his health challenges, his research proposal on respiratory biometrics had impressed the selection committee. As the aircraft accelerated down the runway and lifted into the clear blue sky, neither Jamal nor his father realized that their real troubles were about to begin. The seatbelt sign had barely turned off when Stephanie Keller appeared beside their row, her posture rigid and expression stern. "I need to see the documentation for that device again," she said, gesturing toward Jamal's oxygen concentrator. Andre maintained his professional demeanor. "Of course." He reached into his bag and produced the folder containing all their paperwork, physician statements, FAA approvals, and airline documentation. Keller took the folder and began examining each page with obvious skepticism. Her eyes narrowed as she flipped through the medical forms, occasionally glancing between the paperwork and Jamal as if trying to catch a discrepancy. "These documents could easily be fabricated," she said finally. "How do I know you're really a doctor?" Andre felt a familiar heat rise in his chest but kept his voice calm and measured. "I understand your concern for safety," he said, retrieving his medical license and hospital ID from his wallet. "Here are my credentials. As you can see, everything is in order." My son requires this oxygen concentrator due to his medical condition. Keller held Andre's ID card at arm's length, examining it with exaggerated scrutiny. By now, several nearby passengers had begun to take notice of the interaction, some turning in their seats or peering over headrests. This says neurosurgeon, Keller noted. Not pulmonologist. So you're not even the right kind of doctor for this condition. I'm not serving as his physician, I'm his father, Andre explained patiently. His pulmonologist's certification is included in the documentation I provided. Jamal shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Andre could see his son's breathing pattern changing, becoming more rapid and shallow. A sign his anxiety was building. This was precisely the kind of stress that could exacerbate his condition. Another flight attendant, a younger man with a name tag reading Michael Turner, approached cautiously. "Everything okay here, Stephanie?" he asked, glancing apologetically toward Andre and Jamal. "I'm handling a potential safety issue with unauthorized equipment," Keller responded curtly. "I don't need assistance." "The equipment is fully authorized," Andre interjected calmly. "As the documentation clearly shows." Turner leaned slightly toward the paperwork. "It does look like standard medical approval forms," he observed. Keller pulled the documents away from his view. "I'm the senior flight attendant on this aircraft. Safety determinations are my responsibility." She turned back to Andre, her voice rising slightly. "This device doesn't look like standard approved equipment. It's a Resironic SimplyGo Mini," Andre explained. "One of the most commonly approved portable oxygen concentrators for air travel. The FAA approval is right there on page 3 of the documentation." Keller's lips tightened. "I've been flying for 22 years, and I know what approved devices look like. This one doesn't meet my standards." Andre took a slow, deliberate breath. "With all due respect, the FAA sets the standards, not individual flight attendants. I'd like to speak with the captain or chief flight attendant about this issue." "That won't be necessary. I have final authority over cabin safety," Keller insisted. "If you continue to be difficult, I'll have security meet the plane at our destination." Jamal's breathing had become noticeably labored now. The pulse oximeter on his finger showed his oxygen saturation dropping slightly, not to dangerous levels yet, but concerning. "Dad," he whispered, his voice tight with anxiety. Andre turned immediately to his son, medical instincts taking over. "Slow, deep breaths, Jamal. In through your nose, out through your mouth." He adjusted the oxygen flow slightly, then turned back to Keller. "This confrontation is causing my son distress, which is worsening his condition. I must insist that you allow us to use his medically necessary equipment without further harassment." The word harassment seemed to strike a nerve. Keller's face flushed slightly, but before she could respond, Turner interjected again. "Stephanie, the documentation does seem in order. Perhaps we should." "I'll handle this, Michael," she snapped. "Return to your duties." Turner hesitated, then reluctantly moved away, throwing a concerned glance over his shoulder. Keller leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Listen carefully. I don't care what paperwork you have. On my aircraft, I determine what's safe. If you don't stow that device, I'll have this plane diverted to the nearest airport and both of you removed." Andre met her gaze steadily. "What you're suggesting would endanger my son's health and violate multiple FAA regulations regarding accommodations for medical devices. I'm formally requesting that you consult with the captain about this issue." For a tense moment, it seemed Keller might escalate further. Then, with a final glare, she snatched the documentation folder closed and thrust it back at Andre. "This isn't over," she said, turning sharply and walking toward the front of the cabin. As she departed, several passengers immediately expressed their support. "That was completely inappropriate," said a middle-aged woman across the aisle. "I've never seen a flight attendant behave that way." "You handled that very professionally," commented an elderly man from the row behind. A younger woman leaned forward from her seat. I'm Amara Jones, a registered nurse. If you need any assistance with your son during the flight, please let me know. Thank you, Andre said, genuinely appreciative of the support. He turned his attention back to Jamal, whose color was slowly improving as his anxiety eased. You doing okay? Jamal nodded, though his expression remained troubled. Why does this keep happening to us, Dad? Andre wished he had a better answer. Some people let fear and prejudice guide their actions. But look around, there are good people too. He gestured discreetly to the supportive passengers. The important thing is that we know our rights and stand up for them calmly. Jamal adjusted his nasal cannula. Do you think she'll come back? I hope not, Andre said, though a sense of unease lingered. Try to relax and enjoy the flight. We've got a big week ahead at MIT. For a brief moment, as the plane cruised smoothly through the sky, it seemed the worst had passed. Jamal even managed to immerse himself in a scientific journal he'd brought for the flight, while Andre reviewed some patient files on his tablet. Neither suspected that Stephanie Keller was merely regrouping for a more aggressive confrontation. 30 minutes of peaceful flying lulled Andre into a false sense of security. Jamal had finally relaxed enough to doze off, his breathing steady and oxygen levels stable. Andre was reviewing research papers when a shadow fell across his tablet. Stephanie Keller had returned, this time clutching a laminated document. Behind her stood another flight attendant, a tall man with a name tag reading, Derek Palmer, who looked profoundly uncomfortable with the situation. Dr. Washington, Keller announced loudly enough to wake Jamal. I've consulted our airline regulations manual. Section 24B clearly states that all electronic devices must be FAA-approved models. She thrust the laminated page toward him, her finger pointing to a paragraph of text. Andre glanced at the regulation, immediately noting the section referred to personal electronic devices like laptops and tablets, not medical equipment, which was covered under entirely different regulations. MS. Keller, this regulation doesn't apply to medical devices. Those are governed by separate FAA guidelines, which specifically permit my son's model of oxygen concentrator. Keller's expression hardened. I'm informing you that this device must be stowed for the remainder of the flight. This is your final warning. Jamal was fully awake now, his eyes wide with alarm as he looked between his father and the flight attendant. Andre straightened in his seat, his voice firm but controlled. I cannot and will not comply with that request. My son requires continuous supplemental oxygen due to his medical condition. Removing it would pose an immediate health risk and could lead to serious complications. Dad? Jamal's voice had a slight tremor. It's okay, Jamal, Andre reassured him, though his own heart was racing. He turned back to Keller. Your request violates both FAA regulations and the Air Carrier Access Act. I must formally refuse. Keller's voice rose. If you don't comply immediately, I'll be forced to divert this aircraft and have you both removed by security. Several passengers were now openly watching the confrontation. Andre noticed Jamal's pulse oximeter showing declining oxygen saturation, dropping from 96% to 92% as his anxiety increased. Making a quick decision, Andre pulled out his smartphone and began recording the interaction. I'm documenting this encounter for legal purposes, he informed Keller. You've been provided with all required medical documentation, yet you're demanding actions that would endanger my son's health. Keller's hand shot out toward the phone. Recording is prohibited on this aircraft. Andre moved the phone away from her reach. Federal regulations permit recording if there's a reasonable belief that rights are being violated, which is precisely what's happening. By now, several other passengers had also begun recording the incident on their phones. Keller's face flushed with anger as she noticed the multiple devices pointed in her direction. Suddenly, the captain's voice came over the intercom, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're expecting some turbulence ahead. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Flight attendants, please be seated." Keller ignored the announcement, continuing to hover over Andre and Jamal. "That device is causing a disturbance on this flight," she insisted. "The only disturbance is coming from you, ma'am," called out a passenger from several rows back. Andre noticed Jamal's breathing becoming more labored, his chest rising and falling rapidly. The pulse oximeter now showed 90%, concerning, but not yet critical. "My son's condition is worsening due to this confrontation," Andre said. "Please return to your seat as the captain instructed." Keller leaned in closer. "I think he's faking it for attention. I've seen plenty of people try this act before." The accusation was so outrageous that Andre momentarily lost his composure. "How dare you?" He caught himself, taking a deep breath. As a doctor, he'd learned that maintaining calm was essential in crisis situations. He tried to call Lisa for legal advice, but his phone showed no signal at cruising altitude. From across the aisle, Amara Jones unfastened her seatbelt and approached. "I'm a registered nurse," she said firmly, displaying her credentials to Keller. "This young man is showing genuine signs of respiratory distress. Your actions are exacerbating a legitimate medical condition." Keller scowled at Amara. "Return to your seat immediately. This doesn't concern you." "As a medical professional witnessing a patient in distress, it absolutely concerns me," Amara replied steadily. Keller's next words were quiet enough that only those in immediate proximity could hear them. "You people always stick together, don't you?" The racial undertone was unmistakable. Andre felt a cold rush of anger but maintained his professional demeanor. "Ms. Keller, that comment was inappropriate and potentially discriminatory. I'm adding it to my formal complaint." The tension in the cabin had become palpable. Other passengers were whispering among themselves, many looking outraged at Keller's behavior. Andre glanced at Jamal and felt a stab of concern. His son's lips had taken on a slightly bluish tint, a clear sign of oxygen deprivation. The pulse oximeter now read 88%, approaching a dangerously low level. "Jamal needs medical attention," Andre said with urgent authority. "This confrontation needs to end now." The aircraft suddenly lurched as it hit the predicted turbulence. Keller grabbed a seat back to steady herself, momentarily distracted from her crusade. "All flight attendants, please take your seats immediately," came the captain's voice again, more insistent this time. Derek Palmer, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, finally spoke up. "Stephanie, we need to sit down. Safety protocols." Keller shot him a venomous look but seemed to recognize she couldn't openly defy the captain's orders during turbulence. "This isn't over," she hissed at Andre before reluctantly moving toward the front of the plane. As she departed, Andre turned his full attention to his son. The situation had gone beyond a matter of principle, Jamal's health was now in genuine danger. The turbulence intensified, forcing Stephanie Keller to retreat to her jump seat at the front of the cabin. Andre seized this opportunity to help his son, whose oxygen levels had dropped dangerously low due to the stress of the confrontation. "Steady breaths, Jamal," Andre instructed, shifting into full doctor mode. He increased the oxygen flow on the concentrator and administered a small dose of anti-anxiety medication from their emergency kit. "This will help relax your airways." Amara Jones remained nearby, monitoring Jamal's condition from across the aisle. His colors improving, she observed as the medication began to take effect. Oxygen saturation coming back up to 90%. "Thank you," Andre said gratefully. To Jamal, he added, "You're doing great, son. Just focus on your breathing." The turbulence gradually subsided, and with it, Jamal's immediate crisis. His oxygen levels stabilized at 94%, not ideal, but within a safer range. Andre allowed himself a moment of relief, hoping the worst had passed. That hope evaporated when Stephanie Keller marched back down the aisle, this time with a determined set to her jaw that sent a chill through Andre. She clutched a clipboard with an official-looking form. "Dr. Washington," she announced loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. I need you to sign this form acknowledging that your son's equipment is creating a disturbance on this flight. Andre glanced at the document, immediately recognizing it as a liability waiver that would effectively absolve the airline of responsibility for any adverse events. I will not sign this. My son's medically necessary equipment isn't creating any disturbance. Your actions are the only disruption on this flight. Your refusal to comply with crew member instructions violates federal aviation regulations, Keller insisted. And your refusal to accommodate my son's medical needs violates the Air Carrier Access Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, and several FAA regulations regarding medical equipment, Andre countered. I'm formally requesting that you note in your report that I've identified these violations. Keller's face flushed with anger. You think you know the rules better than I do? I've been flying for over 20 years. Then you should be familiar with Code of Federal Regulations Title 14, Part 382, which clearly protects passengers with respiratory conditions requiring oxygen, Andre stated calmly. Several passengers had resumed recording the interaction. One called out, "We're all witnesses to this harassment." Keller glanced around, seemingly noticing for the first time how many people were documenting her behavior. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across her face. Then her expression hardened. She gestured to Derek Palmer, who had been hovering uncertainly nearby. "I need your assistance," she commanded. Palmer approached reluctantly. As he drew near, he leaned slightly toward Andre and whispered, "I'm sorry about this," before taking his position beside Keller. Andre felt a surge of apprehension. "Whatever you're planning, I strongly advise against it," he warned. "My son requires this medical equipment to breathe properly." Without warning, Keller reached for Jamal's nasal cannula. Andre moved to block her, but another patch of turbulence hit the aircraft at that precise moment, throwing him slightly off balance. In that split second, Keller grabbed the oxygen tube and yanked it forcefully from Jamal's nose. The sudden movement caused the thin tube to scrape against his nostril, drawing blood that immediately began to drip down his face. "Not permitted equipment," Keller declared triumphantly, holding up the disconnected tube. "Now we've restored safety to this aircraft." The brutality of the action stunned everyone who witnessed it. Jamal gasped, his hands flying to his face as blood mixed with tears of shock and pain. His oxygen levels immediately began to plummet. "What have you done?" Andre shouted, all professional composure momentarily forgotten. He lunged for the tube, but Keller held it out of reach. Andre shifted instantly into emergency response mode. "Jamal, stay calm," he instructed, though his own heart was racing. He examined the tube and saw that Keller's aggressive removal had damaged the connection point. Jamal's lips were already turning blue, his oxygen saturation dropping rapidly below 85%, a dangerously low level that could lead to tissue damage or worse. "He needs that oxygen immediately." Amara called out, rushing to help despite the seatbelt sign. Andre worked frantically to repair the damaged tube, using medical tape from their emergency kit to create a temporary seal. Meanwhile, Jamal's breathing became increasingly labored, each breath a painful struggle. "Someone get the emergency oxygen," a passenger shouted. "Call the captain," yelled another. Passengers throughout the cabin were now on their feet, shouting in protest at Keller's actions. "You could kill that boy," an elderly woman cried out. "This is assault," yelled a man in business attire. Keller seemed momentarily taken aback by the vehement reaction. "I was following protocol for unauthorized." "That's a lie," interrupted a passenger who had been recording the entire incident. "We all saw what happened." As chaos erupted around them, Andre focused solely on his son. He managed to reattach the damaged tube, but Jamal had already begun losing consciousness, his eyes rolling back. "Stay with me, Jamal," Andre pleaded, his doctor's training warring with his father's terror. The plane's intercom crackled to life. "This is Captain Reynolds. We are initiating emergency landing procedures. All passengers and crew, prepare for descent and secure all loose items. What would you do if you witnessed such a shocking act of discrimination that endangered someone's life? Comment number 1 if you believe Stephanie Keller should face criminal charges for her actions. Hit that like button if you're outraged by this injustice and subscribe to hear how this shocking story concludes. Would you have intervened to help Jamal and Dr. Washington? Let's see what happened next as this harrowing situation continues to unfold. Emergency descent initiated. Flight attendants prepare the cabin. Captain Reynolds' voice carried urgency through the intercom system. The aircraft banked sharply, beginning a controlled but rapid descent toward Kansas City International Airport. Andre Washington worked frantically to stabilize his son. The temporary repair to the oxygen tube was holding, but Jamal's condition remained precarious. His oxygen saturation hovered at a dangerous 82%, and his consciousness fluctuated. "Jamal, stay with me," Andre urged, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his heart. "Focus on my voice. Slow, shallow breaths." Across the aisle, Amara Jones unbuckled her seatbelt despite the warning lights. "I'm coming to help," she said, moving to their row. "What can I do?" "Monitor his pulse while I maintain his airway," Andre instructed, falling into the practiced rhythm of emergency medicine. "If it drops below 50, let me know immediately." As they worked to stabilize Jamal, Stephanie Keller's voice came over the intercom, attempting to control the narrative. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're diverting to Kansas City due to a disruptive passenger situation. Please remain calm and seated with your seatbelts fastened." The announcement sparked immediate outcry from those who had witnessed the truth. "That's a lie," shouted a man several rows back. "She attacked a child with medical equipment." "We all saw what happened," called another passenger. "We have it on video," added a third. The cabin had transformed from a typical flight to something resembling a protest, with passengers united in their outrage. Several continued recording, documenting everything despite Keller's earlier prohibition. Captain Reynolds' voice returned over the intercom. "This is the captain speaking. If there are any medical professionals on board, please identify yourselves to the flight crew immediately. We have a medical emergency." Andre called out without looking up from Jamal, "I'm Dr. Andre Washington, a neurosurgeon. My son is the patient in distress. We need the emergency medical kit and any supplemental oxygen immediately." The flight attendant Derek Palmer quickly brought the aircraft's medical kit to Andre. "I'm so sorry," he whispered as he handed it over. "I never thought she would. Just help me save my son," Andre cut him off, opening the kit with practiced efficiency. His assessment was quick and devastating. The onboard kit contained basic emergency supplies but lacked the specialized equipment Jamal's condition required. "We need to improvise," Andre told Amara. "His oxygen concentrator is damaged, but the airflow mechanism might still work partially." Together, they worked to adapt the available supplies, creating a makeshift delivery system using tubing from the emergency kit connected to what remained of Jamal's equipment. Meanwhile, Keller had retreated to the front of the plane, where she conferred intensely with other crew members, occasionally glancing back at the Washington family with visible agitation. The captain's voice came through once more, "Medical personnel, please report our patient's status." Andre used the cabin phone to respond. "Captain, this is Dr. Washington. My son is in respiratory distress following the senior flight attendant's forcible removal of his medical oxygen device. His condition is critical but temporarily stabilized. We need emergency medical services ready immediately upon landing." "Understood, Doctor. EMS will meet us at the gate. We're 12 minutes from touchdown." Those 12 minutes stretched like hours for Andre. Jamal drifted in and out of consciousness, each moment of awareness a small victory. Amara continued monitoring his vital signs while Andre maintained the improvised oxygen delivery. Around them, passengers organized themselves into an impromptu support network. A man who identified himself as a legal assistant collected contact information from witnesses. A woman with emergency medical training helped keep other passengers calm and away from the critical care area to give Andre space to work. "Jamal, we're landing soon," Andre told his son during a moment of consciousness. "Just stay with me a little longer." Jamal's eyes flickered open, focusing briefly on his father's face. His hand weakly gripped Andre's, a silent communication between them. Several rows back, a passenger was using the aircraft phone to contact the hospital in Kansas City, relaying Jamal's condition and medical history as Andre called it out. The atmosphere had transformed completely. What had begun as a routine flight was now a unified emergency response, with passengers and most crew members working together to ensure Jamal's survival. Andre used the aircraft's phone system to make one final call before landing. "This is Dr. Andre Washington. I need to speak with the Chief of Emergency Medicine at the nearest hospital to Kansas City International Airport. This is regarding a 16-year-old male patient with acute respiratory failure who will be arriving by ambulance in approximately 10 minutes. His medical credentials open the necessary doors, allowing him to give detailed instructions for Jamal's care upon arrival. He has a history of restrictive lung disease following thoracic surgery 3 months ago. He'll need immediate oxygen support, possibly BiPAP or intubation if his levels don't stabilize." As the plane began its final approach, the captain addressed the passengers once more, "Ladies and gentlemen, we will be landing in approximately 3 minutes. Emergency vehicles are standing by. Please remain in your seats until medical personnel have boarded and attended to our patient." The aircraft touched down with a slight bump, taxiing rapidly to the gate where a fleet of emergency vehicles waited with flashing lights. As promised, the moment the aircraft door opened, paramedics rushed aboard with a stretcher and emergency equipment. Andre identified himself immediately. "I'm Dr. Washington, the patient's father and a neurosurgeon. My son has acute respiratory failure following removal of his supplemental oxygen." The lead paramedic nodded efficiently. "We've been briefed, Doctor. We'll take it from here." As the medical team transferred Jamal to the stretcher, his eyes fluttered open again, finding his father's face. "Dad?" His voice was barely audible. "I'm right here, Jamal. These people are going to help you breathe easier. I'll be with you the whole time." As the paramedics prepared to transport Jamal from the aircraft, passengers applauded in a show of support. Several called out encouragement, while others continued recording to document every aspect of the incident. Andre turned to Amara. "Thank you for your help. I don't know what would have happened without you." "Go with your son," she replied. "I'll make sure everyone's contact information is collected for the inevitable investigation." As the medical team carried Jamal toward the exit, Andre found himself facing Stephanie Keller, who stood near the cockpit door with arms crossed. Their eyes met briefly, hers defiant, his filled with a father's controlled fury. The confrontation would have to wait. Jamal needed him now. The fluorescent lights of Kansas City International Airport security office cast harsh shadows across the faces of everyone gathered inside. FAA officials had arrived with remarkable speed, accompanied by airport police officers who had established a perimeter around the gate area. Andre Washington stood at the center of a storm of activity, torn between following his son to the hospital and ensuring that Stephanie Keller faced consequences for her actions. Jamal had been stabilized by the emergency medical team and was being transported to Kansas City Medical Center, but remained in serious condition. "Dr. Washington," said a gray-haired man in a crisp FAA uniform, "I'm Regional Director Thomas Harrington. We need your statement about what occurred on that aircraft." Andre glanced anxiously toward the exit where the ambulance awaited. "My son needs me." "I understand completely," Harrington replied. "But we have a serious situation here with potential criminal implications. Your testimony is crucial." Stephanie Keller stood across the room, speaking animatedly to an airline representative. Her gestures were defensive, her expression alternating between indignation and growing concern as she noticed the number of passengers waiting to give statements against her. "That woman removed my son's medical oxygen by force," Andre said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "She ignored documentation, FAA regulations, and basic human decency. My son could have died. She's claiming the device presented a safety hazard, Harrington noted, watching Andre's reaction carefully. That's absolutely false, Andre replied. We had complete documentation, physician approval, and explicit FAA clearance for the device. Multiple passengers recorded the entire incident. As if on cue, a young passenger approached, phone in hand. Sir, I have clear video of everything that happened. She yanked that tube out of the boy's nose hard enough to make him bleed. Director Harrington viewed the footage, his expression growing increasingly grave. We'll need a copy of this video for our investigation. More passengers came forward, each with their own recordings or statements. The evidence against Keller mounted by the minute. Andre's phone rang, Lisa was calling. He had texted her about the emergency landing as soon as they'd touched down. Andre, what's happening? Is Jamal all right? Lisa's voice carried the sharp edge of fear barely contained. He's stable but serious, Andre replied, moving to a quieter corner. They're transporting him to Kansas City Medical Center now. Lisa, it was deliberate discrimination. The flight attendant physically removed his oxygen. Lisa's attorney instincts immediately engaged. I've already contacted our legal team. They're preparing emergency motions right now. I'm on my way to the airport, I'll be on the first flight to Kansas City. I need to get to the hospital, Andre told her. But the FAA wants my statement about what happened. Give your statement quickly, but don't sign anything without legal review, Lisa advised. I've already reached out to Charles Bennett at the Civil Rights Division. This is going beyond airline regulations, this is assault and potentially a hate crime. Andre felt momentarily overwhelmed by the dual crises, his son's medical emergency and the legal storm brewing. As a doctor, his priority was clear, but as a father seeking justice, he also needed to ensure Keller was held accountable. Amara Jones approached, offering a solution. Dr. Washington, I can accompany Jamal to the hospital. With my nursing credentials, I can monitor his condition and keep you updated while you handle things here. Andre hesitated only briefly. You've already done so much. And I'd like to see this through, Amara insisted. No child should experience what your son did today. With profound gratitude, Andre accepted her offer. After sharing his medical credentials with the emergency team and ensuring they had Jamal's complete medical history, he watched as Amara accompanied his son in the ambulance. Returning to the security office, Andre found the situation had escalated further. Keller was now attempting to leave the area, insisting to airport police that she needed to rejoin her crew. Ma'am, you need to remain here until our investigation is complete, an officer stated firmly. This is ridiculous, Keller protested. I was following company safety protocols. That device was not properly documented. We have multiple videos showing otherwise, interrupted Director Harrington. Including footage of you physically removing medical equipment from a minor patient. A tall, distinguished man in an airline executive uniform entered the security office, immediately drawing attention. I'm William Breslin, Vice President of Operations for Atlantic Airways. What's the situation here? Before anyone could respond, multiple passengers began calling out explanations, each more damning than the last. Your flight attendant assaulted a child. She ripped out his oxygen tube. The boy nearly died because of her. Breslin's expression darkened as he surveyed the chaotic scene. His eyes found Andre, standing apart from the crowd with dignified composure despite the circumstances. Dr. Washington, he inquired, approaching Andre. I've been briefed on the initial reports. I want to assure you that Atlantic Airways takes this situation extremely seriously. My son is fighting for proper oxygenation in an ambulance right now, Andre replied evenly. So you'll understand if I find corporate assurances insufficient at this moment. Breslin nodded solemnly. Completely understandable. What can we do right now to support your family? Ensure that woman never works in aviation again, Andre said, nodding toward Keller. And provide all surveillance footage from the aircraft to investigators immediately. Director Harrington joined them. Dr. Washington, we've reviewed enough preliminary evidence to detain Ms. Keller pending a formal investigation. He lowered his voice. The videos clearly show her actions constituted assault at minimum. We'll need your formal statement, but you should be with your son now. Andre gave his preliminary statement, providing contact information for follow-up. As he prepared to leave for the hospital, his phone rang with an update from Amara. Dr. Washington, Jamal is stabilized. They've got him on proper oxygen support and are monitoring him closely. His levels are coming back up, 92% and rising. Relief washed over Andre. Thank you, Amara. I'm on my way. As Andre headed toward the exit, Keller's voice rose in protest as airport police officially detained her. This is discrimination against me. I was just doing my job. The irony of her claim was not lost on the witnesses, several of whom called out in response. Discrimination? You're the one who targeted that boy. We all saw what you did. Outside the security office, Andre found a media presence already forming. News of the incident had spread rapidly across social media, with passenger videos beginning to circulate online. A reporter thrust a microphone toward him. Dr. Washington, can you comment on what happened on your flight today? Andre paused, choosing his words carefully. Today, my son nearly died because a flight attendant decided his medically necessary oxygen equipment approved by the FAA and documented properly, was somehow threatening. Despite multiple passengers intervening, she physically removed his oxygen, causing him to suffer respiratory distress. His voice remained steady, but emotion glimmered in his eyes. This was not about airline policy. This was about prejudice, plain and simple. With that statement, Andre departed for the hospital, leaving behind a storm of questions and a social media explosion that would soon bring national attention to Jamal's story. The antiseptic smell of Kansas City Medical Center's intensive care unit was all too familiar to Andre Washington. As a neurosurgeon, he had spent countless hours in similar facilities. But walking these halls as a father rather than a physician gave the environment an entirely different weight. Jamal lay in the hospital bed, an oxygen mask covering his face and monitors tracking his vital signs. Though still sedated, his condition had stabilized significantly since arrival. The emergency team had done excellent work, immediately providing the high-flow oxygen his body desperately needed after the traumatic incident on the plane. Dr. Sofia Rivera, the pulmonologist overseeing Jamal's care, reviewed his charts with Andre. The good news is we've avoided intubation. His oxygen saturation is holding at 95%, and the preliminary scans don't show permanent damage to his lung tissue. Thank God, Andre murmured, gently holding his son's hand. What about cerebral hypoxia? He lost consciousness for several minutes. EEG shows normal brain activity, Dr. Rivera assured him. We'll continue monitoring, but all indications suggest he'll make a full recovery. Physically, at least. The unspoken concern hung between them, the psychological trauma of having life-supporting equipment forcibly removed in a confined space thousands of feet above the ground. That kind of trauma wouldn't show on medical scans. Amara Jones, who had remained at the hospital despite having no obligation to do so, stood nearby. He's strong, she observed. The way he fought to stay conscious even when his oxygen dropped so low, that takes incredible will. Andre nodded gratefully. I can never repay you for what you've done, Amara. Just seeing him recover is enough, she replied. I've left my contact information with your wife's office. I'll testify about what I witnessed whenever needed. The door to Jamal's room opened, and Lisa Washington entered with the focused intensity that had made her one of Atlanta's most formidable civil rights attorneys. She moved immediately to Jamal's bedside, touching his face with gentle fingers. My baby, she whispered, before turning to embrace Andre. I took the first flight out. The airline's CEO himself arranged it after our legal team contacted their general counsel. Despite the circumstances, Andre managed a small smile. "You've been busy." "Atlantic Airways knows they're facing the lawsuit of the century," Lisa confirmed. "But that's secondary right now. How is he?" As Andre briefed her on Jamal's medical status, Lisa's expression reflected both relief and mounting determination. When he finished, she turned to Amara. "Ms. Jones, thank you for protecting my son. We'll make sure your extraordinary kindness is recognized." "Anyone would have done the same," Amara insisted. "No," Lisa said firmly. "They wouldn't. Many people would have stayed silent, looked away. You didn't." After Amara departed, promising to return the next day, Lisa updated Andre on the rapidly developing situation. The FAA has officially detained Stephanie Keller. They're reviewing all the video evidence, and it's damning. The Department of Justice has assigned a special team from the Civil Rights Division to investigate potential hate crime charges. Andre sat heavily in the chair beside Jamal's bed. "All of this because our son needed to breathe. It's not just about today," Lisa said, sitting beside him. "According to information our team has uncovered, Keller has a history of complaints. 3 separate incidents involving passengers of color with medical accommodations over the past 5 years. The airline settled each quietly." "So they knew," Andre said, anger seeping into his voice. "They knew she was a liability and kept her flying anyway." "Exactly. This goes beyond one flight attendant's actions. There's a pattern of institutional failure that allowed her to remain in a position of authority despite clear warning signs." Their conversation paused as Jamal stirred, his eyes flickering open. "Mom." His voice was muffled by the oxygen mask. Lisa leaned forward immediately. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now." Jamal's eyes moved between his parents, confusion gradually giving way to remembrance. "The plane, she took my oxygen." "We know, son," Andre assured him. "She can't hurt you anymore. You're going to be fine." A nurse entered to check Jamal's vitals, smiling at his improved consciousness. "You have more visitors than any patient in the hospital," she told him. "We've been turning away reporters all afternoon." "Reporters?" Jamal asked weakly. Lisa and Andre exchanged a glance. "The incident has gone viral," Lisa explained gently. "Videos from the plane are all over social media. People are outraged about what happened to you. The hospital has received flowers, cards, and well wishes from across the country," the nurse added as she adjusted Jamal's fore. "The front desk looks like a florist shop." As the nurse departed, Andre's phone rang with a call from MIT. "Dr. Washington, this is Dr. Helena Chen from the Summer Science Program. We've heard about what happened to Jamal. Please let him know his place in the program is secure, and we can delay his start date until he's fully recovered." "Thank you," Andre replied, genuinely touched by the consideration. That will mean a lot to him. When he shared the news with Jamal, a ghost of a smile appeared beneath the oxygen mask. "Still want me?" "Of course they do," Lisa assured him. "Your brilliant mind hasn't changed, just your timeline." A soft knock at the door interrupted them. A hospital administrator entered, looking apologetic. "Dr. and Mrs. Washington, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there are representatives from several social justice organizations in the waiting area. They're offering resources and support for your family. Tell them we appreciate their concern," Lisa replied. "We'll connect with them tomorrow after Jamal has had more rest." After the administrator left, Andre noticed Jamal watching him intently. "What is it, son?" Jamal removed his oxygen mask momentarily, his voice stronger than before. "What's going to happen to her?" "The flight attendant? She's facing serious consequences," Andre explained carefully. "The FAA has detained her, and there will likely be criminal charges." "Good," Jamal said simply, replacing his mask. Later that evening, as Jamal slept under the watchful eyes of the ICU nursing staff, Andre, and Lisa stepped into the hallway to speak with the hospital's security director. The incident's high profile had necessitated increased security protocols. "We've implemented restricted access to this floor," the security director explained. "Only authorized medical personnel and visitors on your approved list will be permitted." "Thank you," Lisa said. "Has there been any concerning activity?" "Nothing specific, but situations that generate this level of public attention sometimes attract unwanted elements. We're being cautious." As they returned to Jamal's room, Andre's phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline read, "Flight Attendant's History of Discrimination Exposed, Atlantic Airways Faces Scrutiny." "It's starting," Lisa observed, reading over his shoulder. "The airline is going to face serious questions about their hiring and retention practices." "As they should," Andre replied. If they'd acted on previous complaints, Jamal would never have been traumatized. Lisa squeezed his hand. "We have a strong case, multiple witnesses, video evidence, documented history. This isn't just about justice for Jamal anymore. It's about making sure this never happens to another family." Andre looked through the doorway at his sleeping son, a mixture of love and determination filling his heart. "When I became a doctor, I swore to do no harm. I believe in healing, in second chances. But what that woman did to our son crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. The law will hold her accountable," Lisa assured him. "And we'll make sure the systems that enabled her are reformed." As night fell over Kansas City, the Washington family remained united in their hospital vigil. Outside, a movement was building, one that would eventually transform airline policies nationwide and force a long-overdue reckoning with discrimination in transportation. But for tonight, their focus remained on Jamal's steady breathing and the beeping monitors that confirmed their son would live to fight another day. 1 week after the harrowing incident that nearly cost Jamal Washington his life, the hospital staff gathered to celebrate his discharge. Though still requiring supplemental oxygen, his condition had improved enough for him to continue recovery at the hotel suite Atlantic Airways had provided for the Washington family. "Remember, take it slow," Dr. Rivera cautioned as she signed the discharge papers. "Your body needs time to heal from the oxygen deprivation. No strenuous activity for at least 2 more weeks." "I understand," Jamal replied, his voice stronger than it had been days before. The physical recovery was progressing well, but Andre had noticed his son's heightened anxiety whenever medical equipment was adjusted or when strangers entered his room too abruptly. As they prepared to leave, Amara Jones arrived for a final visit before returning to her home in Chicago. "I just wanted to see you on your feet before I left," she told Jamal with a warm smile. "Thank you for everything," Jamal said, briefly embracing her. "Dad says I might not be here if you hadn't helped." "Your father did the hard work," Amara insisted. "I just provided an extra pair of hands." Lisa presented Amara with a small gift box. "A token of our appreciation. We can never fully repay your kindness, but we wanted you to have this." Inside was a delicate silver pendant engraved with the medical caduceus and the words, "With courage, healing begins." Amara's eyes glistened as she fastened it around her neck. "I'll wear it to remind me of Jamal's courage," she said. "And to remember that speaking up matters." After Amara's departure, the family was escorted through a private hospital exit to avoid the media representatives still maintaining a presence outside. The incident had become a national story, with passenger videos viewed millions of times across social media platforms. At their hotel suite, Lisa updated Andre and Jamal on the rapidly developing legal situation. The FAA has formally charged Stephanie Keller with multiple violations of aviation safety regulations, including interference with a flight crew member's duties, as she ignored the captain's orders to be seated during turbulence, and reckless endangerment of a passenger. "What's the potential penalty?" Andre asked. "Substantial fines and possible imprisonment," Lisa replied. "But that's just the beginning. The Department of Justice has opened a formal civil rights investigation under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination in programs receiving federal funding, including airlines. Jamal listened intently, his expression thoughtful. So this isn't just about what happened to me? No, sweetheart, Lisa explained. Your case has opened a much larger investigation into patterns of discriminatory behavior in air transportation. The DOJ is reviewing incidents nationwide. Later that afternoon, news broke that Atlantic Airways had terminated Stephanie Keller's employment following their internal investigation. The company's statement acknowledged a serious breach of company policies, federal regulations, and basic human decency. Andre and Lisa had also filed their civil lawsuit against both Keller personally and Atlantic Airways as her employer. The complaint detailed multiple counts of negligence, discrimination, assault, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. As media coverage continued, the narrative broadened to examine systemic issues of discrimination in transportation. Cable news panels featured experts discussing the intersection of medical discrimination and racial bias, with Jamal's case as the central example. They keep showing those videos, Jamal noted, watching a news segment that featured blurred footage from the plane. It's weird seeing myself like that, not being able to breathe. Andre muted the television. We can limit your exposure to the coverage if it's troubling you, son. No, it's important people see it, Jamal insisted. But maybe I should talk to someone about how it makes me feel. Sometimes I wake up thinking I can't breathe, even though my oxygen levels are fine. Andre and Lisa exchanged glances, both relieved at their son's self-awareness. They had already researched trauma specialists but had been waiting for Jamal to indicate readiness. That's a great idea, Lisa said. We've found several excellent therapists who specialize in medical trauma. Would you like to review their profiles together? The following day, Jamal had his first session with Dr. Maya Patterson, a psychologist specializing in adolescent trauma. While Jamal spoke with Dr. Patterson, Andre received a call from his hospital in Atlanta. Take all the time you need, Andre, his chief of surgery assured him. We've redistributed your cases and patient load. Your family comes first right now. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate the support. Meanwhile, preparations for the legal proceedings against Keller moved forward at an unprecedented pace. The preliminary hearing revealed her defense strategy, claiming she had genuine concerns about the safety of Jamal's oxygen equipment and had acted within her authority as a flight attendant. The prosecution countered with overwhelming evidence, including video recordings from multiple angles showing her dismissal of proper documentation and her aggressive removal of Jamal's oxygen tube. Expert witnesses testified that the portable oxygen concentrator posed absolutely no safety risk to the aircraft and was explicitly approved by FAA regulations. The judge denied bail, citing the severity of the charges and deeming Keller a flight risk due to her connections in the airline industry. 1 month after the incident, the Washington family gave their first formal television interview. The decision hadn't been easy, but as Lisa pointed out, controlling our narrative prevents others from defining it for us. The interview, conducted in their hotel suite, revealed the full impact of the incident. Jamal spoke with remarkable poise about his experience, though his hand occasionally reached for his father's when recounting the most traumatic moments. I just remember thinking, why doesn't she believe us? Jamal explained to the interviewer. We had all the documents. My dad showed his medical license. Other passengers were telling her she was wrong. But none of it mattered. Do you think race was a factor? The interviewer asked carefully. Jamal glanced at his parents before answering. I think if I didn't look the way I do, she might have given us the benefit of the doubt. Instead, she assumed the worst about us. That we were lying, that our paperwork was fake, that I was faking my condition. The interview resonated deeply with viewers nationwide. By the following morning, Jamal had received thousands of supportive messages, including many from young people with medical conditions who had experienced similar discrimination. Andre was particularly moved by his son's composure during the interview. You handled that with incredible grace, Jamal. I'm so proud of you. I kept thinking about what you always tell me, Dad, Jamal replied. That excellence can't be denied forever. 2 months after the incident, Jamal felt strong enough to begin working with the MIT professors who had offered to provide private instruction until he could formally join the program. The university had arranged virtual sessions with leading scientists in respiratory biometrics, Jamal's original research interest that had now taken on profound personal significance. As Jamal immersed himself in academic work, finding healing through intellectual engagement, Andre and Lisa continued their advocacy. Andre spoke at medical conferences about the intersection of medical discrimination and racism, while Lisa leveraged her legal expertise to push for industry-wide policy changes. A support group formed for families who had experienced similar discrimination, with the Washingtons providing resources and connections to legal assistance. What had begun as a traumatic individual incident was transforming into a movement for systemic change. The trial date for Stephanie Keller was set for early fall, coinciding with what would have been Jamal's original start date at MIT. As the family prepared for this next phase of their journey, Jamal made a quiet but significant announcement over dinner one evening. "I want to attend the trial," he said. "I need to be there in person." His parents exchanged concerned glances. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" Lisa asked. "Dar. Patterson mentioned it might be re-traumatizing." "I've discussed it with her," Jamal assured them. "She thinks it might actually help my healing process. I need to see this through, not just for me, but for everyone else who's faced discrimination and didn't have videos or witnesses or parents who could fight back." Andre studied his son's face, seeing not just determination but a newfound maturity forged through adversity. "Then we'll be there together," he said simply. "As a family." As summer transitioned to fall, Jamal continued growing stronger, both physically and emotionally. The support that had poured in from around the world had shown him that for every Stephanie Keller, there were thousands of people willing to stand against injustice. With each passing day, the Washington family moved closer to their dual goals: justice for what had happened and transformation of the systems that had allowed it to occur. The upcoming trial would be challenging, but they would face it united, their eyes fixed not just on accountability for past wrongs but on creating a more equitable future. 6 months after the incident that had changed their lives forever, Jamal Washington stood at the entrance to MIT's summer science program, his father by his side. Though it was technically winter, January in Massachusetts bringing a crisp chill and occasional snowfall, the program had created a special session specifically to accommodate Jamal's delayed start. "Ready?" Andre asked, adjusting his son's scarf. Jamal no longer required continuous supplemental oxygen, though he still used it occasionally during sleep or physical exertion. "More than ready," Jamal replied with a confidence that had been hard-won through months of recovery, therapy, and legal battles. As they entered the building, the program director Dr. Helena Chin greeted them personally. "Jamal Washington," she said warmly, extending her hand. "Your research proposal was brilliant before, but your revised work incorporating your personal experience with respiratory monitoring technology is genuinely groundbreaking." Other students and faculty gathered in the atrium, many wearing small blue ribbons that had become a symbol of the movement against medical discrimination sparked by Jamal's case. Several approached to introduce themselves, treating Jamal not with pity but with the respect accorded to someone whose courage had catalyzed important social change. 2 weeks earlier, Stephanie Keller's trial had concluded with a verdict that sent shockwaves through the airline industry. Found guilty on all counts, she faced the judge for sentencing in a packed courtroom where the Washington family sat in the front row. Judge Miranda Ortiz had delivered a powerful statement before announcing the unprecedented sentence. "The court recognizes that Ms. Keller's actions went beyond negligence or momentary poor judgment. When you deliberately removed life-supporting medical equipment from a minor patient, you violated not just federal aviation regulations but the most basic covenant of human decency. Your actions demonstrated a callous indifference to human life that this court cannot overlook." Keller had been sentenced to 18 months in federal prison followed by 200 hours of community service specifically working with organizations serving disabled youth of color. The sentence made national headlines, with legal experts noting its significance as a deterrent against similar discriminatory actions. The civil case against Atlantic Airways had settled for a substantial but undisclosed sum, with the more significant victory coming in the form of mandatory policy changes. The airline had agreed to implement comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all staff, create new protocols for passengers with medical devices, and establish an independent oversight committee to review accommodation complaints. Andre had used a portion of the settlement to establish the Washington Foundation for Medical Equality, dedicated to supporting young people of color with medical conditions and advocating for equal treatment in transportation and public accommodations. The foundation had already provided assistance to dozens of families and was working with congressional representatives on new legislation to strengthen protections for travelers with medical needs. Lisa's legal advocacy had resulted in the FAA revising all medical accommodation protocols, creating clearer guidelines that prioritized passenger safety over subjective crew member judgments. The Washington Regulations, as they were informally known throughout the industry, had become the new standard for airlines nationwide. Jamal's recovery journey had not been without challenges. The physical healing had progressed steadily, but the psychological impact had manifested in unexpected ways. Anxiety attacks when boarding planes, heightened alertness around authority figures, occasional nightmares reliving the moment of oxygen deprivation. Through therapy with Dr. Patterson and the unwavering support of his family, Jamal had gradually reclaimed his sense of security. Each milestone, his first flight after the incident, speaking at a national conference on medical equity, starting at MIT, represented not just personal healing but a public reclamation of spaces that discrimination had temporarily made hostile. Now, as Jamal settled into his dormitory room and prepared for his first day of classes, Andre reflected on the extraordinary journey they had traversed. What had begun as a traumatic incident had transformed into a movement that was literally changing laws and saving lives. After helping Jamal arrange his belongings, Andre prepared to return to Atlanta, where he had recently resumed his medical practice with a new focus on underserved communities. His experiences had changed his approach to medicine, making him more attuned to the ways systemic biases could affect patient care. "Call me tonight after your first seminar," Andre reminded his son. "Mom wants to hear every detail." "I will," Jamal promised. "And Dad? Thank you. For fighting for me that day on the plane. For not giving up." Andre embraced his son, overcome with pride at the young man's resilience. There was never any other option. 3 months later, the Washington family received the American Civil Liberties Union's Humanitarian Award for turning personal trauma into positive social change. At the ceremony, Jamal, now thriving at MIT, delivered an acceptance speech that brought the audience to their feet. "What happened to me was wrong, but the response from thousands of ordinary people who demanded justice was profoundly right," he told the crowd. "Together, we've transformed a moment of discrimination into a movement for equality." The ultimate test came during spring break, when Jamal boarded a flight from Boston to Atlanta to visit his family. The difference in experience was remarkable. The new flight attendant, having recognized his name during check-in, went above and beyond to ensure his comfort, discreetly asking if he required any accommodations without making a spectacle of the interaction. More significantly, Jamal noticed a young black child several rows ahead who also used a portable oxygen concentrator. The flight crew treated the child and his family with dignity and respect, following the new protocols that had been implemented industry-wide following the Washington case. As the child passed Jamal's row during deplaning, their eyes met in a moment of silent recognition. The boy's mother glanced between them, suddenly realizing who Jamal was. "Thank you," she mouthed silently over her son's head. That evening, at dinner with his parents, Jamal shared the experience. "Seeing that kid being treated with dignity, knowing he didn't have to go through what I did, that made everything worth it." Andre squeezed his son's shoulder, reflecting on their journey from victims to advocates to changemakers. The system hadn't transformed completely, discrimination never disappeared overnight, but meaningful progress had occurred, and lives were being protected as a result. "I've made a decision," Jamal announced as they finished dessert. "I'm going to apply to medical school after MIT. I want to become a pulmonologist like Dr. Rivera." Lisa smiled knowingly. "Following in your father's footsteps into medicine?" "But charting my own path," Jamal clarified. "Using my experience to help others who struggle to breathe freely, in every sense of that phrase." As the Washington family drove home through the Atlanta evening, the lights of the city twinkling around them, they carried with them the knowledge that their courage had created ripples of change extending far beyond their personal victory. Through determination, dignity, and an unwavering commitment to justice, they had transformed a moment of trauma into a movement that would help countless families breathe easier for years to come. This powerful story teaches us that discrimination can arise anywhere, even in situations where professional standards should prevail. The Washington family's experience highlights how systemic racism can manifest as life-threatening medical discrimination when unchecked. Yet it also demonstrates the importance of documenting injustice, standing firm in the face of discrimination, and leveraging both personal courage and legal frameworks to create lasting change. The bystanders who recorded evidence and offered assistance show us that allies matter tremendously in moments of crisis. Their willingness to speak up transformed a private trauma into a catalyst for public reform. Most importantly, the story reveals that true justice extends beyond individual accountability to address the systems that enable discrimination in the first place. Jamal's journey reminds us that healing from discrimination is complex but possible, especially when trauma becomes a source of purpose. By channeling their experience into advocacy, the Washington family transformed victimhood into empowerment, creating protections that will benefit countless others facing similar situations. What would you do if you witnessed discrimination like what happened to Jamal? Has this story changed how you'll respond if you see someone being treated unfairly? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more powerful accounts of justice prevailing. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Washington family's remarkable story of courage and transformation. Together, we can all work toward a world where everyone can breathe freely.